25-year-old Tiera Strand had big dreams. The young mother from Austin, Texas, was working and finishing up her high school diploma and had plans to join the Navy. One evening in April of 2023, Tiera met up with some friends on 6th Street downtown. She got separated from her group, is seen on video being attacked by someone outside of a bar, and then she disappears. 5 days later, her remains were recovered near Temple, Texas, more than 70 miles from where she was seen on camera. More than 2 years later, Tiera's case has gone cold.
Hello, and welcome to Box in the Basement podcast. I'm your host, Arlene.
And I'm Leah.
In the last 50 years, the U.S. has had nearly 1 million homicides, and since then, over 250,000 cases sit in a box in a basement where all hopes for justice go to die. In 1996, someone shot my uncle Leon Laurelis, changing my life forever and leaving a devastating hole in my heart, and his case remains unsolved. Join me and my wife, Leah, as we shed light on these forgotten victims, their life, the loved ones they left behind, the evidence, and the theories of who committed these crimes, leaving communities in fear and leaving families without answers. Support our effort to change the justice system through the Homicide Families Victims' Rights Act, as we hope to make a difference with our audience as we remember the victims and demand justice. In 1996, my world was shattered when my uncle Leon Laurelis was shot execution style in a small town in Texas. To this day, his murder remains unsolved, and the pain of that injustice continues to haunt me, my family, and Leon's friends and co-workers. Here at Box in the Basement, we want to shed light on the overwhelming number of unsolved murders and disappearances here in Texas and beyond. We want to bring awareness to the lesser-known cases that got little to no attention in hopes that someone listening will come forward with any information, because we strongly believe all lives matter. Ultimately, we want to get justice for Leon and for all the victims whose cases are sitting, collecting dust in a box in a basement. Please note that this episode contains depictions of violence that some people may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Please like and follow our pages on all social media platforms for Box in the Basement Podcast and Justice for Leon Laurelis. And now you can also find us on YouTube.
2023 seems like a decade ago. War broke out in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict again. The Russia-Ukraine conflict dragged on. Civil war broke out in Sudan, leading to an enormous humanitarian crisis. Democracy and individual liberty declined worldwide. Donald Trump was indicted on numerous criminal charges, and the world would continue to heat up, literally. It wasn't all bad, though. New breakthroughs in malaria, Alzheimer's, and cervical cancer treatment were announced. Space travel became cool again, with India landing a spacecraft on the moon. And it was the summer of Barbenheimer, the release of two major blockbusters, Oppenheimer and Barbie. Watching them back-to-back was called the Barbenheimer. The week of April 16th, 2023, Last Night by Morgan Wallen topped the Billboard Hot 100, followed by SZA and Miley Cyrus's Grammy winner Flowers. Super Mario Bros. Movie was number 1 at the box office that week, and Daisy Jones and the Six was number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list. No, I have not read it. I know. I'm a diehard Stevie Nicks fan here. I need to read it. We've covered Austin before, so we'll just go over some basics today. 2023 was Austin's hottest year on record since 1897 and had more than 80 days over 100 degrees. Job growth in Austin was pretty good in 2023, with a healthy number of technology and manufacturing jobs added and an unemployment rate lower than the national average. Austin slipped out of the top 10 largest U.S. cities that year, however, with the influx of people taking those new jobs slowing significantly. Austin is home to a ton of major company headquarters and large hubs, including Apple, Cisco, Google, Hewlett-Packard, Intel, Meta, Oracle, PayPal, VMware, and Tesla, and dozens of others I can't think of off the top of my head. It's also home to the University of Texas, which, loath as I am to say anything nice about my burnt orange-wearing rivals, is an incredible public institution. The population of Austin in 2023 would have been just under 1 million people, around 992,000. And the roads and highways are set up to handle about 100 people at any given time. I love Austin, but God, the traffic is horrible. We unfortunately don't have a whole lot of information about Tiera Strand's early life, but we do know that she was 25 years old, she was the mother to a 6-year-old daughter, she lived and worked in Austin, and she was almost finished with her GED and wanted to join the Navy so she and her daughter could have a better future. That last part kind of surprised some of her family members because Tiera was obsessed with doing hair and nails. They figured she'd go to cosmetology school. But Tiera had bigger plans. The phrase, quote, she would light up the room, and quote, has kind of become a joke in the world of true crime. But that's literally how some of Tiera's friends and family described her. She was warm, friendly, affectionate, happy. She was a good mom and a good friend who was close with her family and absolutely loved the holidays, mostly because it gave her an excuse to shower her little girl with gifts and treats. Tiera's sister Mariah said her favorite memories with Tiera involved hanging out with her and her daughter and having lazy days where they spent the day in sweats watching movies and doing each other's hair. On April 16, 2023, Tiera and some friends decided to head downtown to 6th Street in Austin. If you're not from Texas or you're not familiar with Austin, 6th Street is the party street. There are tons of bars, clubs, restaurants, and live music venues there. There's something for everyone. You've got clubs catering to young people and slinging $2 shots, and then you've got slick minimalist bars that charge $37 for a martini, and everything in between. The numbered streets in downtown Austin are someplace you should go once if you live in Texas, just to kind of get a feel for things and see what the hype is about. 4th Street is a good place to kind of get your feet wet if you've never done the downtown scene before. It's a little less crazy. That's where the gay bars and clubs are. You get the experience of being downtown, but with a smaller, less crazy crowd. And honestly, the bars and restaurants are cooler. That's just my opinion anyway. So Tiera and her friends headed down to 6th Street, as people in their 20s in Austin tend to do. Her mother would later recall that Tiera mentioned the day before she went missing that she'd been working really hard lately and that she was really excited about her future. So she was probably just ready to blow off a little steam and have a normal night out at the bar. Tiera and her friends went to the Mooseknuckle Pub, which is a downtown mainstay, and it's located in what locals call the Dirty Sixth, which is a section of 6th Street that tends to cater to the younger, shall we say, more spirited crowd. Don't go to the Dirty Sixth if you're over 30. Just don't. You can't keep up anymore, I promise. So Tiera and her friends are inside the bar, probably having a good time, enjoying the drink specials, maybe dancing, and then something goes wrong. We know at some point Tiera gets separated from her friend group, and then a fight starts just inside the bar. Tiera can be seen leaving the back entrance to the bar and walking around to the front. Surveillance cameras and bystanders with cell phones catch parts of this fight as it started again outside of the bar and then spilled into the street. Tiera can be seen being attacked by a group of women just before 2 a.m., and then the fight breaks up and Tiera can be seen running away, leaving her purse, shoes, and cell phone behind. Her friends had come outside at this point, and she left without them as well. And this is the part where I remind you that things must have been really bad for a grown woman to leave her purse behind with all her belongings in it. She must have been really scared or really pissed off in order to do that. Her friends were outside the bar at that point, so maybe in a split second she realized her belongings would be safe with them. Tiera's friends expected her to come back in a few minutes after she'd cooled down. One friend said she saw Tiera walking towards Trinity Street, but she never did come back. This friend attempted to follow her down Trinity, but lost her. Her friends searched for several hours, but had no luck. At some point in the wee hours, Tiera had called her mother Monica, who was working the night shift, but Monica didn't get to return the call until around 3:30 a.m., and one of Tiera's friends answered the phone, saying they had her purse and other belongings. Right away, alarm bells went off in Monica's head. That wasn't like her. Call it maternal instinct, call it intuition, but Monica knew that was completely out of character for her daughter. Friends and family immediately turned to social media to help spread the word of Tiera's disappearance. Maybe someone somewhere had seen her or was helping her and would make contact. As we said, 6th Street is busy all the time. Surely someone somewhere had seen her. Austin police got involved, but as we've discussed in previous episodes, investigating a missing adult is difficult, and authorities are usually inclined to believe, at first anyway, that the disappearance is voluntary. For all intents and purposes, Tiera did leave the scene of the fight under her own power. She just vanished afterwards. There was security camera and cell phone footage of Tiera leaving the bar and of the fight outside, but very little physical evidence otherwise that would explain what happened after Tiera headed towards Trinity Street. She left her purse, shoes, and other belongings behind, and some of her hair extensions had been pulled out during the fight, but that's it. Nobody saw or heard from Tiera after the early morning hours of April 16th. Then, on the morning of April 21st, Tiera's mother Monica got the phone call no parent ever wants to get. A driver had found the remains of 25-year-old Tiera Strand on the side of the road in Bell County, some 70 miles from 6th Street. Tiera's remains were sent to the Southwestern Institute of Forensic Sciences in Dallas, but the medical examiner who performed the autopsy was unable to determine a cause or manner of death. There was no significant trauma and no significant natural disease that would explain why an otherwise healthy 25-year-old woman would be deceased on the side of the road. Toxicology showed the presence of ethanol in her system, which tracks because she was out drinking with her friends, but there was no sign of drugs. There was no sign of damage to her hyoid bone either, suggesting she wasn't strangled. Keep in mind that her remains were found 5 days after she went missing, and the medical examiner theorized that injuries or marks that could shed light on her cause of death may have been obscured by decomposition during that time. So, how in the hell did Tiera get from 6th Street to a stretch of interstate between Temple and Waco? Unfortunately, there aren't many answers here. The medical examiner's report reads, quote, "The events that occurred between the time the decedent was last known alive and the time her remains were discovered are currently unknown." End quote. We know that Tiera left the Mooseknuckle, a fight with other women spilled out into the street, and a witness put Tiera heading down Trinity Street, which intersects with 6th Street not far from where Tiera was partying with her friends. What happened between that time and the discovery of her remains is a mystery. So let's talk about a few theories. At this point, there is very little to go on, so we're going to bring in some thoughts from the family and those who witnessed the fight, including some of Tiera's friends. First is that someone from the altercation caught on camera caught up with Tiera as she ran from the scene and harmed her. This is pretty likely. Tiera left the Mooseknuckle Pub from the rear entrance. She can be seen making her way around the building to the front of the bar. The people she was allegedly fighting with inside came outside and continued the squabble, and this was caught on both street cameras and bystanders' cell phones. The fight broke up and Tiera stormed off, leaving her personal belongings behind. It's very likely she was just walking away to put physical distance between herself and the women she was brawling with and to blow off some steam and clear her head. If you've ever been in a physical fight, you know it's a huge rush of adrenaline. You are instantly sober, instantly pissed off, and you just want the situation to end one way or another. You aren't exactly in your right mind, so it isn't shocking that she just left her purse and shoes with her friends and walked away. I would probably do something similar in that situation. So, as we mentioned before, one of the people hanging out with Tiera that night saw her rush off towards Trinity Street, but quickly lost sight of her and circled back to the Mooseknuckle. And that's the last sighting we have, at least from anyone on Tiera's side. We have no idea what these women were actually fighting about, and that might be some important context we're missing. In any case, it's not unbelievable to think that one of the people Tiera was fighting followed her or tracked her down on Trinity Street or one of the other nearby roads in downtown Austin. Maybe they scooped her up in a vehicle, killed her, and then drove her to Bell County to dump the body. I know that as you're sitting here listening to this in your office or car or home, that might sound a bit ridiculous, but if you're a fan of true crime, you know that people have been killed for far less. Some petty squabble at the bar where emotions are running high presents a perfect opportunity for someone to act like a fool and take a life. The fight could have been serious. We don't know. We honestly don't know what they were fighting about. I've seen some criticism of Tiera's friends and their action, or lack thereof, that night, but I'm not sure how fair that is. As we said, we have no idea what the fight was about. Not everyone is willing to throw themselves in the middle of a physical altercation they're not part of. We can judge them, but we weren't there, and we don't know why the fight happened or who all was involved. So I think it's kind of dumb to criticize at this point. Tiera left behind her belongings. Her friends picked them up, and we know at least one person tried to chase her down when she ran off. I've seen some criticism of her friends that they didn't try hard enough to find her, but again, this is 6th Street on a mild evening on a weekend. It was crowded. I think this is just an attempt to place blame and find an explanation because we don't know what happened. Someone needs to take the fall, and someone needs to be at fault. On the other hand, could one of Tiera's friends be involved? We don't have access to any interviews or police reports involving her friends that were present that evening, as this is still an open investigation, so it's hard to say. But if the fight did involve her friends, or they threw her under the bus, or they simply didn't care if she was okay during or after the fight, then that is something to consider. Some of the parts of the story that we do have from her friends seem odd. Yes, it's plausible that Tiera just left her belongings with her friends because she knew they'd keep track of them and have her back. But what if that wasn't the case? We don't have any audio of the fight, just video. What if one or multiple friends were actually involved in the fight? What if they were egging it on? What if one of those friends tracked her down and killed her? It's hard to believe, but I think it is worth looking into. It's gross to think about, but not out of the realm of possibility. And on the flip side of that, if her own friends lost track of her, it's possible that the person responsible for her demise wasn't one of her attackers either. Maybe she just got unlucky and came across another bad actor that evening. She didn't have her shoes on, and she didn't have her wallet or keys, and she'd been drinking. I wonder if someone took advantage of that situation, maybe offered her a ride and then killed her. I know it absolutely sucks to think that she may have been the victim of shitty circumstances twice in one evening, but we can't discount the possibility. Think about it. 6th Street would probably be a gold mine for some skeezy predator piece of shit. Lots of young women in impractical shoes walking around after a few drinks in a busy area. You think someone isn't going to take advantage of that? It's disgusting, but it needs to be considered. To me, this is the most plausible explanation. Is it possible the people she was beefing with at the club tracked her down and killed her? Yes. Is it more likely that some scumbag was lying in wait to take advantage of a young woman with a few beers in her? I believe so in this case. Maybe my faith in humanity is just so thin at this point that I see boogeymen in every corner, but that's my opinion here. So another theory we've seen floating around is that Tiera was the victim of an accident. I think it's possible, but that doesn't really satisfy the question of how she ended up 70 miles from where she was last seen alive. I considered the possibility that she was hit by a car and then possibly dumped, but I would think that the medical examiner's finding would reflect that. Either some kind of massive brain injury or other trauma would surely have been visible even 4 to 5 days after it happened if she were hit by a car. The traffic in downtown Austin isn't speeding, generally speaking. Because of all of the foot traffic and one-way streets, it's usually slow going until you get to some of the major roads and highways just outside the downtown area. While it's certainly possible that Tiera made it to I-35, which is just a few blocks from the pub, or Cesar Chavez Street, again, I find it hard to believe that there wouldn't be some indicator of massive trauma if she'd been run down by a car. She wasn't shot, there's no indication that she was stabbed, so what happened? The Bell County Sheriff's Office is treating the case as a homicide, so like I mentioned before, I tend to believe that this was intentional. Multiple witnesses and persons of interest have been interviewed in both Bell County and in Austin, but no arrests have been made, and nobody has been publicly declared an official suspect in the case. The two law enforcement entities are conducting a joint investigation and are reportedly cooperating well, but the family hasn't been satisfied with either party's progress, and that's understandable. Things get lost and overlooked when multiple law enforcement agencies are involved, and you have the matter of miscommunications and egos as well, no matter how well they say they're cooperating. I saw in an online report that the family was attempting to raise money to hire a private investigator to get some momentum going on the investigation, and I think that's probably the best course of action here, given the lack of leads and information. So that's where we are today with Tiera Strand's case. If you have any information on the fight that occurred outside the Mooseknuckle Pub that evening, or about how Tiera ended up in Bell County over an hour from 6th Street, please contact Austin PD at 512-472-8477 or the Bell County Sheriff's Department at 254-933-5442.
Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the podcast creators, host, and guest. If you or someone you know is a victim of crime, support is available. Call 855-4-VICTIM to speak with someone who can help you understand your rights and options. Visit victimconnect.org to learn more. We are excited to announce that we are now a part of the Darkcast Network. Darkcast Network, the best in indie podcasts. Check out all the great shows at darkcastnetwork.com.
Hi, my name is Mallory Jenner Robinson. Join me on A Hateful Homicide, a true crime and investigative journalism podcast dedicated to telling the stories regarding the murders and hate crimes of our transgender, non-binary, intersex, and two-spirit community members in the United States and abroad. This is A Hateful Homicide.
Also, please like and follow our pages on all social media platforms for Box in the Basement podcasts and Justice for Leon Laurelis. You can now also find us on YouTube. If you like what you hear, please do us a favor and subscribe. It would help so much, my lovelies. Also, please share this episode so we can bring awareness to these lesser-known cases so we can reach more people in hopes that someone who may know something will come forward. I'd also like to ask that you sign my petition for my Uncle Leon Laurelis' case to be reopened and reviewed with fresh eyes. And you can find our petition on change.org. This podcast has a bigger purpose than just providing information and entertainment. The Homicide Victims Families Rights Act is a bipartisan bill that was signed into law by Congress in 2021, and we want to see it put into action. This law establishes a systematic process for reviewing case files related to cold case murders. The focus is on providing a mechanism for the families and friends of murder victims to request a formal review of such cases. Thank you for joining us. Be kind. Later, Gators.